Well, hi there guys, and welcome back to Induction Noise. I am Mr. Q, and this is my office at Gilmore Collection, where we sell some pretty nice cars. So if you're ever in Cape Town, Mooley Point area, Greenpoint, come and check us out. We got some cool stuff on the floor, and you're welcome to just pop in for a coffee and have a browse. So today's video is a little bit different to what I normally do, because this is what YouTube might call a reaction video. And these things are usually a little bit hostile and confrontational and horrible, but this isn't quite like that. See, yesterday a video popped up on my feed from a channel that's based in South Africa called Grease and Gravel, run by a guy called Francois. It's a much bigger channel than ours, so I figured react to his video, maybe get some extra subscribers from his. No, I'm kidding. Francois does an excellent job reviewing cheap, reliable cars, doing cool stuff with those cars, and a lot of his content also sort of focuses around We Buy Cars and what they do. He's got lots of really cool guides on how to buy from We Buy Cars, what to do, what to look for, all those kinds of cool things. And he does an excellent job of those videos. So the video that popped up last night caught me a little off guard, because he was talking about Ferraris, which is not something that he would normally have on his channel. And I kind of spotted a couple of things that are perhaps a bit misleading, factually incorrect, misinformation, and all of that. But I want to be perfectly fair here. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known half of this crap, because Ferrari is rarefied air. Not everyone has access to these cars. Not everyone knows what it's like to drive, own, maintain, service, look after these cars. For the past 5 years, I've been here at Gilmore Collection. We look after Ferraris, we service Ferraris, we talk to guys who own, live with, collect Ferraris, and you get a lot more exposure to what it's really like actually living with these things, as opposed to what's out there in the ether and in the internet. And you will be surprised how different it actually is. So without any further ado, I want to get into some of the points that Francois made in his video and correct a few wrongs, if I may. The first thing is, well, actually, it's more of a We Buy Cars thing than a Francois video thing. Their listings are terrible on some of these cars. Again, probably just through ignorance. They don't know any better. But all of the cars discussed in Francois' video were Ferrari Californias. And they were all listed on We Buy Cars as a Ferrari Scuderia California. I know the Ferrari model range pretty well. I've never heard of a Scuderia California. It doesn't exist. And one of these cars, as we'll find out in a couple of minutes, is actually not a California. It's a California 30, which is slightly different. And it would actually help them to list that car more accurately, because the Cali 30 does command a little bit of a premium. So one of the things that comes up quite a lot is, how do these types of cars end up at We Buy Cars? So two of these cars that are listed and mentioned in the video are at 70 something thousand Ks, and the other one's on 81, 82,000 Ks, something like that. Now, I know that that's not high mileage for that car. I know that car can do twice that mileage and not be a wreck. It's perfectly fine. These cars are incredibly well built, incredibly well engineered. They can do 200,000 Ks and not turn to dust. But for some bizarre, unknown, inexplicable reason, everyone in South Africa seems to believe that when a Ferrari has more than 5 kilometers on the clock, it is now a wreck. It is a high mileage, dangerous piece of crap that you should steer clear of at all costs. And it's simply not true. These are excellent, very high quality cars. They do not fall apart when they have 5,000 Ks on them, 10,000 Ks, 50,000, 60, 80, 100, 110, 200,000 Ks on them. In fact, in many cases, the more you drive them, the more reliable they will be. So, two of the cars, as I say, would be considered on the South African Ferrari buyer's market as high mileage cars. And that's probably why they end up at We Buy Cars. Because the main reason that anyone sells their Ferrari is because they want to buy another one. Ferrari guys are car guys. They don't sell cars because the maintenance costs get too high or because they get bored or frustrated with them, as the video suggested. They sell them because they've got the itch. They want the next one. They want the newer one. They want the faster one. They want the next big experience. So with the higher mileage cars, as I mentioned, those guys might have gone to dealers and tried to trade them in somewhere and found that the dealers would offer them a lot less than what they were expecting. We know that even though there's nothing wrong with that car, and even though we know that car can do 3 times that mileage and still be perfectly fine, that car will be considered a high mileage car by our buying market. And for that reason, the car's likely to sit on the floor for quite a while. So we need to compensate for that and offer them slightly less for the car. For We Buy Cars, it's not a problem. They look at the book value, they pay them out whatever they want, because they move massive volumes of cars. They move more cars in an hour in the mornings than we move in an entire year. So, apples with apples here. So yeah, the cars didn't necessarily end up there because they are potentially black holes of financial ruin. They probably ended up there simply because the guy wanted something new. To go through the cars individually, the 2012 with 12,000 Ks on the clock, 2014 with 12,000 Ks on the clock, would technically speaking be a California 30, which was a later model of the car. It had slightly more power, and they are slightly more sought after and therefore higher priced in the market. Francois's main concern with this car was that it was listed as having a service history that was complete but due. Contrary to popular belief, servicing a Ferrari is actually very, very reasonable. We just did a service on a Ferrari, and if you take one of these Californias to a service at the main dealer in the waterfront, you're more than welcome to go. I can show you the receipts. 6.5 to 8 grand. That's what it's going to cost you to do an oil change, a normal annual service on one of these cars. It's not ruinously expensive to get it done. So yeah, the fact that the service is due, really not a problem. It's a complete non-issue. On the next car, the 2010 with 77,000 Ks on the clock, the condition report mentions that the link rod dust cover is missing or torn. Francois in the video mentions again that this could be a very expensive thing to fix. You're not going to be able to pick these parts up in Midas, and it's going to be money, and you're going to have to wait for parts, and you're going to be without your car, and all of those horrible and weird things. Granted, back in the day, that's exactly what I would have thought if someone told me that my Ferrari needed a link rod dust cover. Well, as it turns out, I wanted to go and look at what these parts actually cost, so I pulled up my Ferrari parts diagrams, and lo and behold, that part does not exist. The link rods do exist, but they do not have dust covers on them. So, goes to show the accuracy of these condition reports, really. But more interestingly, I have actually stood under a Ferrari California. And I can tell you, you will not be able to see the link rods under that car in a normal inspection. The entire floor of a California is covered with a completely flat floor plan. So you cannot see a lot of the suspension components simply by looking at and taking a gander. You need to remove those covers and those floor pans in order to see those things, which they don't do during a normal inspection. So for them to say that those parts are broken, torn, missing, whatever, when they don't even exist for that car, how accurate are these condition reports really? As for waiting times on parts, it has happened once or twice, admittedly, that the agents didn't have parts in stock for a particular car or a particular job, but there are lots of options in the UK and in Europe. Euro Spares, for example, Scuderia Spares. I order parts from them all the time, 2 days, and they're right here. So no issue waiting for parts at all. Finally, the white car with 82,000 Ks on the clock, listed as having a partial service history. Again, on a Ferrari, this isn't actually a problem. You see, most of these cars do 1,000, 2,000, maybe 2,500, 3,000 Ks a year. So very, very few Ferrari owners will actually service their cars annually every year. For listing purposes, We Buy Cars would list that car as having a partial service history because it wasn't serviced 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, every single year. It isn't a problem. The cars don't break because they don't get serviced. The oil that they chuck out if they service it every year would be perfectly good oil. So there's no point in servicing these cars every single year. In fact, if you go and look at service histories on older Ferraris, like 360s, 355s, 348s, the cars that had cam belts, you'll find that most of them, especially early on in their years when they weren't being driven a lot of miles per year, those cars only ever got serviced when they had a cam belt service due. So every 3 to 5 years they'd get a service, fresh oil, filters, everything else gets checked out, car's good, drive it again. So the fact that this car says partial service history, it's really not a problem. Obviously, I'd need to look at the service history and see what's actually going on there, whether there's big gaps in it. You know, maybe the car did 30, 40,000 Ks without being serviced. That would be cause for concern. But if it was serviced regularly every 10, 15,000 Ks, it doesn't really matter if it went 3 or 4 years between services. As long as it got serviced regularly according to the mileage, chances are that car's going to be perfectly fine and there's nothing wrong with it. So yeah, I mean, Francois got most of it right. I think it's important to say to people, you know, don't think because you can afford to buy a supercar, you can afford to maintain a supercar. But in the case of these Californias, I think he was maybe a little too harsh because they're really not massively expensive cars to keep going. They're not going to be as cheap as a VW Polo or a Corolla. I'm not going to say that. But they're not going to be the ruinous black holes of financial death.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
Francois' comment section, on the other hand, had some entertaining bits, and I'm just going to extract a few comments from there. Clutch replacement is needed every 65,000 Ks. Yeah, I don't know where you got that from, buddy, but not true. I've seen Ferrari Californias with 130,000 Ks, even 150,000 Ks, still on the original clutches. It uses a dual clutch transmission. Those clutches wear very, very slowly over time, and very rarely need replacement within the lifetime of the car. So as long as you service the gearbox properly and you service the car properly, those clutches are going to last a very, very long time. Next comment, you have to buy your Ferrari from Ferrari to be considered a Ferrari owner and get invited to their events. Also not true. You can buy a Ferrari from anyone you want, and as soon as you own a Ferrari, you can take your paperwork and your ID to Vito at the service center. He will add you onto that car's profile as the owner, and Ferrari will know that you own that car. Regardless of where you service it, regardless of where you bought it, Ferrari will know that you own that car. There's nothing from Ferrari that says you cannot buy your Ferrari from other Ferrari dealers or private owners or whatever. You don't have to. It's simply not true. Ferrari requires that you sign first right of refusal to buy back your car, and you are not allowed to service it anywhere else. Well, we've already covered that. You can service your Ferrari anywhere you want. They do not have any problem with that. Unless the car's under warranty, they might require that you service the car with Ferrari, but it's going to be under warranty anyway, so you'd be stupid not to. The first right of refusal thing, it's kind of a gray area because it is and it isn't true. Ferrari may sometimes ask buyers of cars to sign a first right of refusal or a contract of some description that says they will not sell the car within a certain time period, usually 1 or 2 years. And the reason they do that is because they don't want people to use up their allocation to buy cars for the purpose of reselling them and making a profit. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's actually a very good way to protect the brand and protect your own sales integrity. But oftentimes you get cars that are limited editions, they have limited numbers of allocation, for example, and Ferrari will ask you, please don't resell this car at a premium, because it just muddies the market and it messes things up further down the line. So again, nothing wrong with that practice. A lot of other people do weird and wonderful things. I'll maybe make a video on what Porsche make you sign if you buy a car from them, because that really will have the hair on your back of your neck stand up. There was a comment that said a 2014 model with 12,000 Ks on the clock. Mileage must have been turned back. Obviously. No. 12,000 Ks on a 2014 car, fairly typical for Ferraris. The car behind me is a 2011. It's only done 27,000 Ks. I've got a 2005 car against the wall there that's only done 24,000 Ks. Ferraris tend to have lower mileages than your average Corolla or your Polo, and 14,000 or 12,000 Ks on a 2014 model, it's not unheard of. It's not even particularly low. It's just, fairly average for a Ferrari. If a Ferrari ends up at We Buy Cars, no one else wants it. I think we've pretty much covered that. It's not true. There are various reasons why someone might sell their Ferrari to We Buy Cars, and it's not necessarily that the car is a problem. Ferraris must be red. Really? That's not true. This one's grey. Finally, since I've still got a couple of minutes left before this qualifies as a long-form video on YouTube, I've been here 5 years. People come into the showroom quite often just to look at cars and talk about Ferraris because, like I said, it's interesting to people because it's a world that they're not necessarily a part of and they want to learn more about them. So there are lots of people who come in, mainly younger guys who come in and they ask questions about Ferraris and ownership and buying a Ferrari. And I sort of go, really? Where did you hear that? So here are some of the crazy facts that people have asked me about over the past couple of years. Your first Ferrari has to be red. I think we've covered that. Not true. You have to be invited to buy a Ferrari. Not strictly speaking true. Most Ferraris, production model cars, anyone with a checkbook can walk in and buy one. It's not that your name has to be on a list. It's not that you have to own a whole bunch of cars before you're allowed to buy one. You can walk into a Ferrari dealership tomorrow and just buy a Ferrari. There are certain cars that you have to be on their VIP list for. And there are various tiers to this list, and certain tiers will get invited to buy certain cars. But these will always be special, low volume, limited number cars that they basically produce very small quantities of. If you modify your Ferrari, you will get put on the blacklist. Not entirely true. You are allowed to modify your Ferrari. You are allowed to customize your Ferrari. However, if you modify your Ferrari or do things to it to such an extent that Ferrari no longer considers it to be a Ferrari, particularly if you're the kind of person who posts your Ferrari on social media and maybe have a YouTube channel that you post your car onto, they may ask you to remove all Ferrari badging from the car. That will be their first step. Failing that, they'll put you on the blacklist. That doesn't mean that you can never own a Ferrari again. It just means that you can't buy a Ferrari from a Ferrari main dealer. But you can modify your car. You can put different wheels on it. You can put a body kit on it. You can change the interior. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. But the moment that Ferrari considers it no longer to be a Ferrari, like if you put a rotary engine in a 458, they're going to tell you to take the Ferrari badges off that car. Someone asked me the other day if you have to go on an advanced driving course to drive a Ferrari. No, anyone can jump into one of these cars and drive them. They're actually very easy to drive. It's not a particularly difficult or tricky thing to drive. You just drive it. Do you need to be a very good driver to drive them to the limit? In certain cases, yes. Other cases, less so. Some of them are much easier to handle than others. But at the end of the day, these cars are only as fast as you drive them. It's not like you get into a Ferrari and it roars off at 200 k's an hour. It's only as quick as you're going to drive it. So if you drive slowly, it's as easy to drive as a Golf. It really isn't that tricky. You do not need to go for an advanced driving course to drive a Ferrari. Ferraris need lots of maintenance and are very expensive to run. Again, I think we've covered this. I don't think it's true at all. So there you go, guys. Not a nasty confrontational reaction video. It's just that, you know, these are things that I've learned over the last 5 years that I didn't know before, and I wouldn't expect anyone else to know. Please like, comment, subscribe, and check out the Grease and Gravel channel as well. I think he's got some excellent content there. Go and buy a Ferrari.